Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tangmen based on novel. So let's start. Dailuoli was shocked. He swept his tiger claws in front of him, but didn't manage to hit anything. Following this, he felt a pain in his belly and crashed to the ground. After this, a strong force transmitted from below his waist, and he was lifted up. He was being lifted by Huo Yuhao's left leg, and Huo Yuhao gave him a kick to his belly with his right leg, sending Dailuoli flying away. Dailuoli wasn't concerned about the pain he had suffered. Instead, he shouted, "Who's there?" The person who had exclaimed didn't run away, but emerged from the darkness. She was in disbelief as she looked at Huo Yuhao and Dailuoli, who was crawling up from the ground. It was the beautiful battalion commander, Shuun. Dailuoli's expression immediately changed greatly when he saw Shuun. He blushed and became extremely embarrassed. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Huo Yuhao walked towards Shuun in a well-behaved manner and greeted her, "Battalion commander." Shuun quickly came in front of the two of them. She took a look at Dailuoli before turning to Huo Yuhao. She was shocked as she asked, You are unable to beat an ordinary soldier. Dailuoli, you are regressing." Dailuoli turned his head to one side. It was the truth that he couldn't beat Huo Yuhao. However, the utter embarrassment he was subjected to after the goddess in his heart learned about this truth caused him to feel extremely tormented in his heart. Huo Yuhao smiled and said, "Battalion commander, you can't put it this way either. We were only sparring. Furthermore, martial souls aren't everything. That doesn't mean that a person without a martial soul can't be strong." Shuun twisted her lips. "This means that you think you are one of those who are strong even without a martial soul." "Bullshit. Without a martial soul, how can you be strong? Dailuoli is just weak." Huo Yuhao gently shook his head and said, "He isn't strong, but he isn't the first person with a martial soul to lose to me. He won't be the last either. I don't think you can beat me either." Shuun hadn't expected Huo Yuhao to talk to her in such a manner, even though he was only a mere small team leader, and after he knew her identity. Her expression changed immediately. She was about to burst out in anger, but suddenly thought of something and said, "All right. I'd like to try then. I'd like to see how you can defeat me without a martial soul. Dailuoli, watch carefully. Don't throw the face of soul masters in the future." Before Shuun finished speaking, Huo Yuhao lifted his right leg and kicked her belly. Shuun's forte wasn't her strength. While her cultivation was greater than Dailuoli's, she wasn't as strong as he was. She was immediately kicked more than 10 meters back, and bent her waist in excruciating pain. She squirmed in place and retched repeatedly. "What are you doing?" Although Dailuoli was embarrassed, he kept on stealing glances at Shuun. Seeing that Shuun had been kicked by Huo Yuhao, he was immediately frantic. He couldn't be bothered with anything else, and quickly rushed to her side to help her up. Huo Yuhao looked innocent as he said, "The battalion commander asked me to try. Should I not have attacked?" Huo Yuhao had kicked Shuun quite hard. She wasn't wearing any armor right now, and only felt cramping pain coming from her belly. Her face was pale as she struggled to stand up. She had always been pampered since she was young. Since when had she been beaten to such a state? She was completely furious because of her pride and the pain she had suffered. "Go to hell." Shuun pushed Dailuoli away, and her body started to shine brightly. Following this, her forehead also lit up, and a dazzling crown surfaced on her head. Beneath her feet, 2 yellow and 2 purple soul rings quickly rose. Her cultivation was indeed greater than Dailuoli's. She was a 4-ringed soul ancestor. Considering the fact that she looked younger than Dailuoli, it was already pretty impressive that she possessed such a cultivation. Huo Yuhao was slightly stunned when he saw her cultivation. He had seen such a martial soul before, and it indeed had some form of significance. It was a star crown, the strongest martial soul in the imperial family of the Star Luo Empire. Only those who had the direct bloodline of the imperial family could possess such a martial soul. Her surname is Shu, which means that she's a member of the imperial family. No wonder Dailuoli is so obsessed with her. She's actually a princess. Perhaps this Shuun is Shu Jiujiu's younger sister. However, her identity as a princess was unable to affect Huo Yuhao's current plan. Shuun unleashed her martial soul, and the pain she suffered in her belly lessened significantly as she adjusted her soul power. However, her face was still pale, and she pointed her finger at Huo Yuhao. Her second soul ring instantly shone, and her star crown slowly rose. Streaks of starlight shot towards Huo Yuhao. This was her second soul skill, Starlight Shine. Shuun didn't believe that an ordinary person could resist a soul master. This fellow actually dared to kick me when I wasn't paying attention. He can't be spared. However, she revealed the same look of astonishment as Dai Luoli when he first fought Huo Yuhao. She was shocked to discover that her Starlight Shine failed to take effect on Huo Yuhao, even though it was supposed to be able to lock onto her opponent. It failed to lock onto Huo Yuhao, and Huo Yuhao avoided her streaks of starlight as he quickly shifted his body. At the same time, he was also rapidly inching closer to her. Huo Yuhao was a little stunned when he saw Shuun's soul skill. This star crown is indeed the strongest martial soul of the imperial family of the Star Luo Empire. The cultivation path that Shuun has chosen is different from Shujiujiu. Shujiujiu is a control-type soul master, while Shuun seems to focus on long-range attacks. In terms of talent, she's slightly weaker than Shujiujiu. However, it'll be difficult to tell who's better once she cultivates to her higher standard. While he thought of this, Huo Yuhao didn't have any intention of going easy on her. As he charged forward, his spiritual power also engulfed Shuun. It was very relaxing for him to deal with Dai Luoli even without unleashing his martial soul and using his soul skills. However, Shuun was adept at long-range attacks, and her star crown was stronger than his mutated white tiger. In addition, she also had 4 rings. It was thus much more difficult to deal with her. Seeing that her starlight shine was ineffective, Shuun pointed her right hand towards the sky. Her star crown immediately gathered a ball of light, with a diameter of over almost half a meter. It was as if a star had descended upon the mortal world. Yuna, you can't harm him. Dai Luoli weakly reminded her. However, Shuun was infuriated, and didn't heed his advice. She pointed her right hand at Huo Yuhao, and her third soul skill, Starburst, flew towards Huo Yuhao. It was a pure offensive soul skill, and it was extremely powerful. Once it blew apart, the explosive force generated could even compare to a 10,000-year soul skill. Its destructive strength was also rather great. Even against her starburst, Huo Yuhao was still fearless. He had his spiritual detection to support him. No matter what soul skill Shuun used, she wouldn't be able to escape his detection. Seeing the ball of starlight flying towards him, Huo Yuhao's eyes flashed mysteriously, and Shuun suddenly felt giddy. At this instant, Huo Yuhao pointed his right hand at the ball of starlight, and it immediately flew forward even faster. Following this, he made a slashing gesture. An invisible force severed the connection between Shuun and the ball of starlight, just like that. Huo Yuhao didn't let the ball of starlight touch him either. He deftly moved it through the air with his hands, guiding it to go around his body. Shuun was shocked when she saw this scene. She had no idea how a person without a martial soul, or rather one who didn't unleash his martial soul, was able to resist her starburst in such a manner. How was this possible? In the next moment, her ball of starlight suddenly enlarged. Instantly, he returned her starburst. He was returning to her what she had tried to inflict on him. It was tit for tat. Shuun didn't have much fighting experience. Huo Yuhao's guess was right. She was the youngest princess of the Star Luo Empire, and was doted on by her brothers and sisters since she was young. She didn't have any significant fighting experience. She came to be a soldier at her own request, as she wanted to contribute to her empire. Shujiujiu had no choice but to deploy her younger sister to the reserves. In her opinion, as long as Shuun didn't have to go onto a battlefield, she would return after she got tired of military life. However, who knew that Shuun would love being in the military, and had spent several months in the military already. She had no intention of returning. The reserves were extremely safe, and thus Shujiujiu wasn't worried about her younger sister's safety, and left her to her own devices. Right now, Shuun was stunned in place after witnessing the miracle Huo Yuhao performed. The starburst she had unleashed earlier was now in front of her. Yuna, be careful. Dai Luoli was alarmed when he saw this, and quickly unleashed his white tiger's Vajra transformation. After this, he leaped and blocked for Shuun. Huo Yuhao silently shook his head. Silly kid. He should have pinned her to the ground. Since he was going to sacrifice himself to save her, he should have taken the opportunity to get closer to her. After spending some time with Dai Luoli, he still quite liked him. Although he was a little stubborn, he was a kind person. Just as Shuyun's starburst was about to hit him, it was suddenly lifted into the air and exploded, releasing a golden halo. Shuyun reacted only at this point. When she saw Dai Luoli using his arms to block her, she seemed slightly moved. This fool. At this point, she suddenly saw Huo Yuhao turning around before fleeing. In the blink of an eye, he had already run several dozen meters away. His voice also sounded from afar. Aren't you going to run considering the huge commotion that we've just caused? Aren't you afraid of being dealt with by those from the military law department? Dai Luoli also reacted. He turned around and looked at Shuyun with a complex look before chasing after Huo Yuhao. Shuyun was the only one standing in place, as she remained in a daze. What had happened tonight was a huge blow to her. If not for Dai Luoli earlier, would her own starburst have struck her? She was most familiar with the power of her attacks. The strength of her starburst was great enough to leave her critically hurt. Who was that person just now? Why was he able to detonate my starburst? After returning to his bunk, Huo Yuhao silently crept up to his bed and under his blanket. His face wasn't red, and he wasn't out of breath. Dai Luoli returned a bit later. However, he didn't return to his berth, but came to Huo Yuhao's bed instead. Thank you. Looking at Huo Yuhao, Dai Luoli struggled to say these two words. Huo Yuhao glanced at him. What are you thanking me for? For beating you up. Dai Luoli was embarrassed as he whispered, you know I'm not talking about that. Huo Yuhao chortled, quickly, return and meditate, so that you can defeat me faster and rid yourself of me. Okay. Surprisingly, Dai Luoli didn't retort. Perhaps he had forgotten about it, but he just returned to his berth, where he sat cross-legged on his bed. Huo Yuhao slid into his blanket and made himself comfortable before he entered deep meditation. He wasn't afraid of Shuyun reporting him. By reporting him, she would expose Dai Luoli, too. Moreover, he hadn't exposed his cultivation as a soul master. Even if she was a battalion commander, she had to be reasonable, too. Dai Luoli sat in a daze on his bed, unable to focus for half the night. As he recalled what had happened, he suddenly realized that what had happened earlier was the best outcome. He was thrashed by Tang Dong, and lost face in front of Shuyun. However, Shuyun also lost to Tang Dong with her four-ringed cultivation. This meant that he wasn't that weak. This was the first time he felt that Tang Dong wasn't so irksome, especially after Tang Dong controlled Shuyun's starburst from striking him. Otherwise, he and Shuyun would have been hurt even though he unleashed his white tiger's Vajra transformation, and even though Shuyun had a four-ringed cultivation. Yuna, am I getting further and further away from you? The night went on silently, and training began as usual the next day. Indeed, Shuyun didn't report Huo Yuhao. Everything carried on as normal. All the new recruits were extremely tired as they trained for the entire day. The intensity of this 3-month training kept on increasing. Seeing that the sky had already turned dark, Dai Luoli proactively came over to tell Huo Yuhao, let's go. Oh? What's with you today? Why are you anxious? Dai Luoli's face turned red, and he softly asked, are you coming or not? Huo Yuhao smiled as he said, it's a good thing when someone wants to be beaten up. Let's go. As he spoke, he stood up and walked out with Dai Luoli. After leaving their bunk, Dai Luoli looked around, but didn't discover anything. He was immediately disappointed. Huo Yuhao wore a crafty look on his face as he softly asked, did you know the battalion commander before yesterday? Yes, Dai Luoli laughed bitterly. Our families are close. Only, she's a legitimate child, while I'm a bastard child. There's a great difference in our statuses. I've liked her for as long as I can remember. However, I've no great talent. No matter how hard I try, my cultivation can't catch up to hers. Huo Yuhao laughed, you're rather honest. Dai Luoli was embarrassed, and glared back at him. He said, I knew you would laugh at me. I know that it's impossible for us to get together. In terms of abilities and status. Are you this useless? Huo Yuhao said disdainfully. Dai Luoli suddenly clenched his fist. What can I do if I come from an inferior background? Huo Yuhao glanced at him coldly. If you have such an attitude, you'll never have any hope in your entire life. Go back, useless trash. I can't be bothered to beat you up anymore. After he finished speaking, he quickly turned around and walked back towards his bunk. You? Dai Luoli quickly stepped forward and stopped Huo Yuhao. He shouted, I'm not useless. Aren't you considered useless if you give up on yourself? Huo Yuhao said scornfully. A true hero's background doesn't matter. So what if you're a bastard son? Let me ask you a question. If you become a titled Doluo, or even a transcendent Doluo, who would care if you're a bastard? Everything's not going well for you because of one issue, you're not working hard enough. Dai Luoli was stunned. Yes. If he were a titled Doluo, or even a transcendent Doluo, who would still look down on him? Who would care that he was a bastard? However, could he really become a titled Doluo? Have you thought it through? Huo Yuhao asked calmly. Dai Luoli suddenly looked very determined. I'll do my best to defeat you first. Huo Yuhao nodded and said, good. As long as you can defeat me, I'll take back what I said about you being useless trash. Otherwise, you're still a piece of useless trash. Let's go. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards the military drill grounds. It wasn't an easy thing to teach his own younger brother. However, Huo Yuhao felt quite delighted for some unknown reason. Ever since he had joined the army after Wang Donga and Wang Chua met with mishaps, he had felt much better. Very soon, the two of them reached the military drill grounds. Dai Luoli was surprised, because Shuun was actually waiting there. There was a dominating look in her eyes, and she looked very cold. Yuna. Dai Luoli called out in joy when he saw her, and quickly ran over to her. Shuun glared at him and said, how many times must I tell you not to call me Yuna? Only my elder siblings can call me that. Dai Luoli paused for a moment before helplessly saying, all right, Shuun. Shuun recalled how he had blocked her attack, without any hesitation yesterday, and the look in her eyes turned gentler. She said, do the two of you come here to train every day? What's with him? He's not a soul master. How is he so strong? Dai Luoli laughed bitterly. If I knew, I wouldn't be beaten up by him every day. Shuun snapped, useless. Let me go again. I was too careless yesterday. I'll take care of him today. As she spoke, she walked in front of Dai Luoli towards Huo Yuhao. Dai Luoli touched his nose and remembered how he had used this same excuse after he lost to Huo Yuhao the first time. However, he had already lost for a month straight now. As she spoke, Shuun walked towards Huo Yuhao. While she sounded like she didn't care about this, it was evident from the look in her eyes that she regarded this fight very highly. After losing to Huo Yuhao yesterday, and almost suffering serious injuries, she felt that she had been greatly humiliated. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to find him today. Huo Yuhao revealed a cold look on his face. He crossed his arms and mocked, I hope you won't need a human shield to protect yourself today. You? Shuun was furious. She wanted to say something, but Huo Yuhao suddenly moved. He suddenly stepped on the ground with his left foot before he charged towards Shuun like an arrow. He was extremely quick. Shuun was a little stunned. She had suffered yesterday, because she was taken by surprise, and her belly was still aching slightly. When she saw Huo Yuhao suddenly moving, she immediately retreated quickly. At the same time, she unleashed her star crown. Streaks of starlight shot out from her star crown towards Huo Yuhao. However, she felt dejected, because Huo Yuhao seemed to be naturally immune to her starlight. No matter how concentrated her attacks were, he was still able to avoid them. It was as if he could predict where her starlight would hit before she even shot it out. The gap between them was quickly shrinking. What did soul masters who were adept at long-range attacks fear? Their opponent getting closer to them. Furthermore, Shuun had challenged Huo Yuhao today after pondering over it for an entire day. She was very clear about Dai Luoli's abilities. It was definitely not a coincidence that Dai Luoli lost so heavily to Huo Yuhao. Although she discovered it by accident, it was obvious that Dai Luoli wasn't beaten up by Huo Yuhao just once or twice. While Dai Luoli's white tiger wasn't pure, his abilities weren't weak. He was a close combat assault-type soul master. Although she had 4 rings and Dai Luoli had 3, she knew that she couldn't compare to Dai Luoli's physical strength if both of them unleashed their martial souls. As a result, she would definitely be unable to handle Huo Yuhao at close range if even Dai Luoli couldn't do so. She had made up her mind to not let Huo Yuhao get close to her no matter what. Otherwise, she would definitely lose. Under such circumstances, she immediately made a decision. Her 3rd soul ring shone brightly, and she unleashed her starburst once again. After Huo Yuhao used his controlling crane capturing dragon to control her starburst yesterday, she didn't fling it directly towards him today. Rather, She flung it towards the ground not far in front of him. At the same time, her body shone brightly with golden light. Her 3 soul rings flashed slightly, and it was difficult to tell which soul skill she was using. Her starburst immediately exploded violently on the ground. The tremendous boom and the following shockwave immediately engulfed the path that Huo Yuhao had to cross to reach her. Shuun only wanted to do one simple thing: widen the gap between her and Huo Yuhao before slowly dealing with him. Given Huo Yuhao's abilities, he could guess what Shuun wanted to do the moment she threw her starburst out. He stopped and leapt to one side when her starburst exploded. He rolled on the ground and dodged the core of the explosion. After he rolled, he leapt towards Shuun once again, minimizing the influence of the explosion. Seeing that her starburst had exploded, Shuun was about to heave a sigh of relief. However, she suddenly saw Huo Yuhao charging towards her from the side. She was shocked once again. This guy's reactions are too quick. Her 4th soul ring instantly shone. She couldn't be bothered with concealing her abilities anymore. She drew streaks of starlight in front of her with her hands and they formed a strange image. This image was obviously a star crown. This star crown started to move towards Huo Yuhao. It was her 4th soul skill, Soul Crush Star Crown. This was a single target offensive and control type skill. It was also the strongest soul skill that Shuun could unleash right now. Once engulfed by this Soul Crush Star Crown, one would suffer from agonizing cuts unleashed by the streaks of starlight that made up the star crown. Even if one could resist these cuts, the streaks of starlight would still turn into a barrier and trap them. This soul skill was extremely powerful. Shuun was still unable to tap into celestial power to strengthen herself, but her control of her star crown was already pretty good. Furthermore, she was extremely focused this time. She knew that she had to lock Huo Yuhao down in order to defeat him. While her idea was good, it was a pity that reality was cruel. Her star crown was about to reach Huo Yuhao, but his figure suddenly turned illusory. His pace doubled, and he managed to escape Shuun's lock-on as he moved his body in some unknown way. At the same time, he leapt forward once again, and gestured towards Shuun, palm turned toward himself. Shuun suddenly felt a suction force pulling her towards her opponent. In such a critical moment, Shuun's reaction was rather commendable. She grit her teeth and another of her starbursts ignited. "Aren't you trying to pull me over? All right, I shall deliver a starburst to you, then." She was already prepared to perish alongside Huo Yuhao. In fact, her star crown could assimilate some of the abilities that she unleashed. This meant that Huo Yuhao was bound to face a greater explosive force if her starburst blew apart, and they were standing the same distance away from it. Huo Yuhao revealed a slight smile on his face. His right palm suddenly shook a few times before Shuun's starburst started to shake, too. Once again, it broke free from Shuun's control, and Huo Yuhao flung it into the air. Huo Yuhao kicked at her as she exclaimed in shock. He hit the same spot he had yesterday. He didn't even bother with being gentlemanly. With one kick, Shuun flew away. It was so quick that Dailorli couldn't make it in time to save her even if he wanted to. He watched helplessly as Shuun flew through the air. As he leapt up, Dailorli immediately charged to Shuun's side. "Yuna, no. Yuna, are you okay?" She felt an excruciating pain in her belly, and her internal organs seemed to have been ripped from their positions. Shuun grit her teeth, and the hatred in her eyes seemed as if it could turn into sharp blades and cut Huo Yuhao to pieces. However, she couldn't speak, because she was in too much pain. Dailorli glared at Huo Yuhao and shouted furiously, "How can you be so hard on her? She's a girl. Don't you know how to be gentlemanly?" Huo Yuhao shook his head and said, "On a battlefield, do you think your enemies will let you off just because you're a girl? Furthermore, she's hurt not because of me, but you." Dailorli was stunned. "Me? You were the one who hurt her. Why am I to be blamed?" Huo Yuhao scornfully said, "You like her, right? Since you like her, you should treat her like your woman. When she was hurt, what were you doing? You can't even protect your own woman. Don't you think you're a useless piece of trash? You?" Normally, Dailorli was already used to how Huo Yuhao tried to agitate him. However, it was different today. He agitated him in front of Shu Yang. Moreover, Huo Yuhao had already hurt Shuun. Suddenly, Dailorli's eyes turned red, and he roared furiously. He unleashed his white tiger and charged towards Huo Yuhao without regard for anything else. 3 seconds later. Bang! Dai crashed forcefully to the ground a short distance away from Shuun. A piece of trash is a piece of trash. If I want to kill your woman or do anything to her now, what can you do? You can only watch helplessly. He became even more scornful. He even placed his hands behind his back and revealed a disdainful look on his face. I'm going to fight it out with you. Dai eyes had turned completely red by this point. He leaped forward again and charged towards Huo Yuhao. Another 3 seconds passed. Bang! Dai crashed forcefully to the ground not far in front of Shuun again. This time, Dai quickly climbed up without Huo Yuhao needing to agitate him. After this, he charged towards Huo Yuhao once again like a crazed tiger. A smile appeared in Huo Yuhao's eyes. At the same time, he also noticed that there was something different about the look in Shuun's eyes right now. Of course, all this didn't stop him from beating Dai up again and again. 3 seconds passed, then passed again. Dai had been thrown to the ground more than 10 times. This time, Huo Yuhao was more violent against him. Not only was Dai shirt torn, but there were even injuries on his body. However, Huo Yuhao had clearly agitated Dai a lot this time. Every time Dai was thrown to the ground, he would crawl up crazily and proceed to attack Huo Yuhao with all his strength. When Dai was thrown onto the ground in front of Shuun another time, and his mouth was already oozing blood, Shuun couldn't help but shout, "Stop fighting. You're not as good as him. Stop fighting. No, I have to protect you. I must protect you." Dai suddenly turned his head back. When Shuun looked into his eyes, she saw a hysterical and crazed look. Within this craziness, she could see a slight mania in it. Dai was persistent. After he finished speaking, Dai charged towards Huo Yuhao once again. Huo Yuhao nodded silently in his heart. This was because he could clearly tell that the part of Dai martial soul that possessed spiritual power was slowly being awakened. His spiritual power was increasing at a shocking speed as he was in this crazy state. Yes, this was the true essence of his mutated white tiger. Right now, Dai attacks were obviously much more ferocious than before. Furthermore, he would form some white shadows around him as he charged towards Huo Yuhao. On a closer look, one would see that these shadows were shaped like white tigers. Dai speed and strength were both increasing as he released spiritual undulations. The white lights around his body also became much stronger than before. Feelings stimulated one's heart and spiritual power. Huo Yuhao wanted Dai to enter a realm that was similar to the one he entered when he yearned for Wang Donga and created his 3 ultimate Haodong skills. Why did he kick Shuun in the same place on both occasions? Did he really not know what it was to be a gentleman? Would he really attack a woman so freely? Of course not. What he was trying to do was make Dai think that he couldn't protect the woman he loved. This was why he suddenly used actions and words to agitate Dai. They were indeed very effective. Dai had gone berserk now. His soul and spiritual power greatly increased in such a state. Finally, even Dai couldn't keep count of the number of times he was thrown to the ground by Huo Yuhao. As he collapsed once again, he tried his best to crawl back up. However, the pain that he suffered stopped him from doing so, even though his soul power kept on recovering. Right now, there were injuries all over his body, and his uniform was already torn and tattered. However, he still seemed very persistent. Even though his body was greatly hurt, the look in his eyes was still burning strongly. "Stop fighting, stop fighting." Tears flowed down Shuun's cheeks. It wasn't that she didn't want to stop Dai or help him. It was just that an unknown force was restraining her as Dai kept on charging crazily towards Huo Yuhao. She could see and hear everything, but she couldn't move. She tried her best to struggle, but she couldn't even gather a shred of her soul power. She could only watch helplessly as Dai charged towards Huo Yuhao time and time again, and failed time and time again. Devil. Huo Yuhao was like a devil in her eyes, whereas Dai persistence and determination caused her to be moved once again. "Are you doing this because of me? Luoli, give up. Stop fighting him. You are inferior to him. Don't." After hearing Shuun's voice, Dai seemed to have taken a stimulant, and supported his body with his trembling arms. Right now, he looked very scary. His body was already blood-stained, and his eyes were particularly bright. There seemed to be an extra blood-red pupil beside his black pupils too. He peered into the sky and roared. His back shone brightly with white light, and this white light seemed to be stained by the blood red on his body, and slowly turned red, creating a projection of a blood tiger. Dai Luoli slowly lifted his hands up beside his body. The sharp blades of light above his claws also slowly turned blood red. He twisted his head and looked at Shuun with his weird-looking eyes. He said, word by word, I can definitely protect you. I will protect you. After he finished speaking, he charged towards Huo Yuhao once again. His speed was even faster than what it was at his peak state. He turned into a blood-red whirlwind and swept towards Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao nodded slightly. Right now, Dai Luoli's fighting strength was already beyond what a four-ringed soul ancestor was able to achieve. His potential was finally being realized. A spiritual type soul master, or rather a soul master with a martial soul that had some spiritual components, would indeed find it more difficult to improve his cultivation. However, the mutation of their martial soul would only truly be completed after the spiritual components in their martial soul had been triggered. Only then would they become stronger than ordinary soul masters. Dai Luoli's white tiger was indeed mutated, but this mutation didn't have to be a negative one. Even an experienced teacher from Shrek Academy wouldn't be certain of this point. However, Huo Yuhao was different. He probably possessed the strongest spiritual type martial soul in the world right now. After 1 month of interaction with Dai Luoli, he was very clear about Dai Luoli's condition. This video will end here.